Today I have 3 simple patriotic decor ideas on a budget. Welcome to the Chic Show. This is a very simple project. I'm going to be using a piece of drop cloth and also a piece of off-white fabric that coordinates with the drop cloth. I'm also using these stamps. I'm going to be stamping on 1776 with red ink. In a few minutes, I'll be gluing the little 1776 to the drop cloth, but I'm going to add a little bit more to this. I'm using this rubber stamp, and I didn't have a navy blue, so I'm using black and blue mixed, and I'm testing that on paper before I actually stamp the stars onto the tag. And now I'm using my hot glue to attach the fabric to the drop cloth. I'm using some fabric scissors to cut just a little hole in the top. I'm not worried about it being any kind of a finished hole or anything. I'm going to be looping through some homemade ribbon. I tore strips from a flour sack cloth, and I'm just going to be using that as the ribbon at the top. Once I decide how long I want it, I'm going to cut it off and tie a knot at the top. I'd like to take a minute to remind you that I do have a Facebook page. I would love for you to join me over there. And I also have a website, lachicshop.com, and I would love for you to check it out. I thrifted this fabric, and I thought it would be perfect to make a bow from. So again, I cut a strip, and actually I ripped a strip so that it would be frayed on both ends, and I think it finishes it off nicely. Once I get my bow formed the way I want it, I'm just adding a dot of hot glue, and then this little tag is finished. This is one of Chalk Couture's transfers, and I'm going to be using just that middle section. This is one of the bamboo cutting boards from Dollar Tree that I had previously stained. Now I'm going to be painting it with Waverly chalk paint in plaster. I'm just going for kind of a dry brushed look. I'm not worried about perfect coverage. I'm going to go ahead and seal the paint so that my transfer doesn't pull the paint up. I'm using Big Top, but you could use Mod Podge or whatever you want to. Just make sure it gets completely dry before moving on to the next step. So that my transfer doesn't stick too much to my wood, I am going to fuzz it just a little bit on this cloth, and that way it will easily remove and not remove my paint. My goal here is to make kind of an ombre effect from the top towards the middle and then the bottom towards the middle. So first I'm using Waverly chalk paint in Night Sky on the top part of the stencil, and then I will blend in some of the dusk with the Night Sky. And as you can see, this worked out perfectly. I did pull that transfer up while it was still wet, and I'll go ahead and wipe it down before I use it again. Starting from the bottom this time, I'm going to do the same thing. Start with that darker paint at the bottom, and then the blended paint at the top. Now for this middle section, I'm using just the Night Sky, and I'm okay with it blending a little bit with the other paints if necessary. As I said, I do want it to be kind of an ombre effect. As you can see, my spacing was a little bit off, but it's not really going to show in the end anyway, and it does look like water. This little sailboat is from the summer collection from Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to be removing that jute twine and using the sailboat only. I'm just looking for my placement where I want this little sailboat to be on my sign, because I am going to be using this stencil from Dollar Tree as well. It's just going to say "Sea to Shining Sea." So I do want to make sure that I have enough room for all the words. I went ahead and hot glued the sailboat to the cutting board before I used the stencil, because I wanted to be sure that I had enough room for the sailboat. And I'm pretty sure I've got the measurements right so that the words will fit on nicely. Now I'll be using some red chalk paint. I don't think this is chalk paste. I think it's probably crimson from Waverly, and I did mix in a little bit of black to make it a little bit of a darker red. And I'll be stenciling on "Sea to Shining Sea" and then going back with a small brush to fill in those stencil marks. I decided to add a little color to the sailboat, so I'm just painting that flag at the top red. To make it a little bit more primitive looking and to bring back some more of that dark wood underneath, I gave it a light sanding. I found this star in my stash, and I had originally painted it blue, but now I'm going to paint it with crimson chalk paint by Waverly. I thrifted some of these letter and number wood blocks a couple of years ago, and I decided to use the 4. I know it's not the 4th of July just yet, but this will be something that I'll be able to use this summer in my July decorating. This is some of the mesh tubing from Dollar Tree, and I just stuck a piece of wire up through it so that I could make these little spirals. It does fray pretty bad when you cut it, so I used a little bit of hot glue just to seal that end off. And I did make 2 of these. Now I'm going to be adding as much as I can to the top of this little block. The glittery star is from Dollar Tree, their bowl filler that they have in the summertime. And of course, this little Christmas tree I'm thinking about adding. I'm just going to play with it and decide exactly what I want to add and where I want to put it. I'll start with those little spirals that I made. I'm just using some hot glue to glue those down in place, and then I'll place the other things in front. Now that I have the larger things glued down, I'll go back and add some smaller things that I had on hand. This little white star is again part of that bowl filler. And then I'm also using that little tiny disco ball and Christmas ornament that you see laying there. And this completes my little patriotic vintage vignette. What do you think? I would love to know which of today's projects was your favorite. Was it the drop cloth tag, the sea to shining sea using the cutting board, or the little vintage vignette? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks again to our hosts for hosting today. Be sure and check out their channels and the playlist in the description box below. Don't forget to give everybody a thumbs up and leave them a comment. It really helps us out, and we do so appreciate it. If you're so inspired, here's another video I think you might like. Thanks so much for watching. Remember to share the chic. Bye now.